If you follow us on Instagram, then you know that I have been getting into watercolors over the last 2 years. It's a great way to document a ride or a great way to relax at the end of a long day of bike touring. In this video, I'm going to share with you all the different portable palettes and paintbrushes and paper that I use to make watercolors. A little bit different video from just pure bike stuff, but I know some of you are also interested in art making. So let's nerd out on art supplies. So first off is this palette by Holbein. They're made in Japan, getting a lot harder to find, and they come in a bunch of different sizes. This is kind of a middle size one. And what's cool about this one is that it's got lots of mixing areas. It's got pretty big wells for a lot of paint, and it's a enameled steel. So what that means is that as you mix colors, it doesn't bead up. So you get an accurate sense of what color you're mixing on this palette. It's also got a cool little thumb hole here. So you can hold it like this. If you want to get one of these, you have to be really careful. There are a lot of counterfeits that are aluminum and not this enameled steel. So a little bit lesser quality. And I don't know if the coating is quite the same. So again, this is Holbein, made in Japan. So let's look at this palette. This is the portable painter. This is really popular amongst the urban sketchers. And what's cool about it is that it's very portable. It opens up like this. And these little gray things that kind of keep the palette closed when it's stored away slide into the sides like so. So you can put clean water and less clean water here, or water and brushes. And it's designed to rest on your knee. So this is a great all-in-one kit. You don't have to carry a separate water cup. And that's probably the biggest advantage of this palette. The mixing areas are okay. They're a little bit on the small side. I sort of wish that this echoed this side, so you'd have 6 large mixing areas and these really tiny ones. And this surface, you kind of have to work on a while. When you first get it, it'll bead up. The colors won't separate. But as it gets more textured, then the paint won't bead up as much, and you get a color, and then you get a better sense of what the colors will actually look like. One bummer thing about this is these pans are slightly smaller than average, I've found. So you're kind of stuck using their pans, and I don't think they sell their pans individually yet outside of a kit. So that's one downside if you like to swap colors often. So getting smaller in size is a super cute little palette, sometimes called a bijou box. And again, this is enameled steel, so similar to this guy. Definitely on the weightier side of a palette this small, but it's got lots of cool features. One, it's got a thumb loop over here, so you can put your thumb through the back. It's got 2 mixing areas, and again, it's got that nice kind of treatment on the surface so the colors don't bead up, and you can get a good sense of what the color actually looks like. And you can also set this up in different ways. You can have just all half pans, or mix it up with a full pan and some half pans. And this one you can get on Amazon. It's labeled as the whiskey painters. They come in a couple different sizes. What I like about this compared to this one is that you can put in full pans. So if you use a lot of a certain number of colors, you can definitely put more capacity for those paints. All right, so let's take a look at this one. And this one is by a company called Art Toolkit. The woman's name is Maria. She's based in Port Townsend. Rides bikes. They actually supplied these palettes during the Swift watercolor trip I did with Swift Adventure Co. And you can see it's kind of based on a business card holder. And what I love about this is that it's pretty modular. This one specifically, it's got 3 mixing areas. You can pop these mixing trays out and put more paint if you want. I actually really prefer this configuration because I do mix a lot of paint. And here you can see it holds 12 mini pans. They've also got kind of double-sized pans. So again, pretty modular, and you can really tailor it to the colors you like to use or the amount of mixing space you want. And of course, this out of all of them is super small. This will fit in your pocket, probably the easiest to bring. It does have some limitations insofar as the mixing spaces are pretty small. So it really depends on your style of painting. If you tend to do more ink and paint, where where you're essentially coloring spot colors, and this makes sense. If you're making big kind of washes and covering large areas of paper, then this one makes less sense. Although it's still doable. Another cool use of a palette like this is, let's say you're experimenting with some colors but don't want to commit it to a larger palette. This makes a great secondary palette. So this could be your experimental colors that you use some of the time. Of course, not complete unless you put some stickers on it. All right, let's move on to paper. So you guys have probably seen these before. These are the Moleskine. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it exactly. I'm sure someone will let me know. These are readily available, and they do hold a wash well, but I do feel they are better if you're gonna do kind of artwork, which is more urban sketcher style, so with line art and paint coloring it. So something like this, where you do some line work and then color it in with paint. And the reason I say that is that it's not, doesn't have a high cotton content. So if you apply really wet washes or different kind of, or more intense watercolor techniques, this paper will kind of give and it won't hold the pigment as well. But generally, a pretty good paper, comes in different sizes. Here's a smaller one. If you buy Maria's art toolkit, one of the packages actually comes with a small one. Here you can see I've been doing a lot of line and paint work, and that's what I think this these Moleskine notebooks are best suited for. So if you like that urban sketcher style, then definitely get these. Not too expensive, easy to find. So next one are these Pentalic Aquash books. Similar form factor to the Moleskine notebooks, a little bit heavier paper. So they do a little bit better when you apply wet on wet washes, dry on wet. It holds the pigment a little bit better than the Moleskine. It's got a little bit rougher tooth too, so it may eat away at the nibs of your fine liners. I love this for something where I might do both, you know, pen and watercolor work, or just pure watercolor. It tends to hold both styles pretty well. So again, this is the Pentalic Aquash notebook. So next one I want to look at are these notebooks by Global Handbook. These come in different sizes from square to panoramic. And what I like about this is the binding. You can lay flat. So if you want a book that travels well, that you can lay flat and cut out pages without destroying the binding, then this is a good one. It's a little bit toothier than the Moleskine, about as toothy as the Pentalic. I feel like it holds, it does better with watercolor washes, a little bit better than the Pentalic, but pretty par in terms of price and kind of the results you'll get from the notebook. Okay, lastly is this guy. Doesn't look like much, but I picked this up at the Daniel Smith store in Seattle. And what's special about this is that it is 100% cotton rag watercolor paper. So this is like legit watercolor paper. It does washes really well. You can get some nice dry brush effect. It's got more tooth. So probably not the best if you do a lot of line work, because it'll eat away at the tip of your pen. But if you want to do dry brush, like with this cactus here, and get that nice texture, and if you like to do wet on wet, then this is the notebook to get. This one is a smaller size. It comes in a larger size. Also comes in pads where you can rip off the pages. Only downside to these guys are that they are pricey. I think this doesn't have many pages. It might be like 15 bucks, and the next size up is 20. But if I had gobs and gobs of money, I would probably just get these notebooks all day long. I know I said I was going to talk about brushes next, but let's just talk about paint. I pretty much just get Daniel Smith paints. Yes, they are on the spendy side, but they're well worth it. They do make a split primary starter pack, so if you want all the colors that you would need to start, I would recommend that. I'll put that in the link in the description below. If you're not ready to invest in this kind of paint, then I'd say, you know, any of the starter kits from Winsor Newton or Sakura work just fine to kind of test the watercolors, if you will. But if you're ready to commit, just get the Daniel Smith paints. Okay, so let's talk about brushes. My preference for brushes has changed over time. This is currently what I'm using the most. And these are the brushes, these are the Casaneo brushes by the brand Da Vinci. And what I like about these is that they're synthetic, and you know, typically you hear that natural hairs are better, but that's not always the case. Natural hair brushes, in my experience, tend to get a little floppy. They lose their point, but these are awesome because they have, you know, similar water retention qualities, so you can put a nice big juicy wash, but they also come back to a point and have a fair amount of resilience. So you can do dry brush techniques, and they're just a lot more versatile in my opinion. So here I've got, what is this? This is a number 2 quill brush. You can see it's a quill by the way it's bound here, and this is a number 4. And if you work in sketchbooks, these two will do you pretty good. In addition to the quills, I've got a Casa Neo striper brush. So this striper or dagger brush, this creates fine textures or lines, so like tree trunks, tree branches. You can also stab with it and make kind of varied foliage surfaces. So pretty versatile. And with all these brushes, I actually cut off the ends and sanded them down so they fit in this little case here. Another brush I like to use is actually this guy. This is just a kind of inexpensive sumi brush made for kind of more calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy, I believe. And what I love about this is they're really expensive and they're great for making those foliage textures. You can really grind it into the paint and the paper and not feel too bad about it, because I think this brush is like $4 or $5. But when you get it wet, it can also come to a point, holds a lot of water, so this could also be used as a inexpensive do-it-all brush. So lastly, there are times, however, when I need a little bit more control, a little bit more detail, and that's when I bring out these guys. These are Escoda Perla travel brushes, and I primarily use 2 sizes. The largest one, which is a 12, the smallest one, which is a 2. Let's get in focus here. So a 12 and a 2. And this is good for kind of detail work. When I paint in the highlights in white gouache, I'll use these. A little bit stiffer fiber, but still can lay down a pretty accurate spot color, local color. I think you can buy these as a kit of 3 or buy them individually. Again, I tend to use the largest and the smallest, the 12 and the 2. And that's it for brushes. So I hope you enjoyed this look into my art toolkit. Hopefully it's inspired you guys to pick up the paintbrush. If you have any other questions, leave those in the comments below. And if you want to buy an original watercolor or a postcard, check out the Big Cartel link in the description below. And as always, keep the supple side down.